Hey everyone, and welcome back. In this video, we'll cover some other helpful tools available in Excel that didn't fit nicely into any of the other lectures. So this will include some features like freeze panes, text to columns, removing duplicate and blank rows, as well as special paste. For this lecture, we'll be using our sample sales dataset again, and we'll start off by having a look at a tool called freeze panes. Freeze panes is a great tool to use when working with large spreadsheets, as it helps us to keep track of what each column actually is. So for instance, if we scroll down our spreadsheet here, it can be easy to lose track of what each of these columns represents, especially as we get further and further from the top, as our column headings get lost. This is where freeze panes can be very helpful. And what it allows us to do is freeze a row, so that no matter where we are in our spreadsheet, we can always see it. To enable this, we need to go to our View tab, and then here within the window group, we have the Freeze Panes button. If you click on that, you'll get three options: Freeze Panes, Freeze Top Row, and Freeze First Column. In most cases, you'll only need to freeze the top row, but we'll cover what all three of these do. So if we click on Freeze Top Row, you'll notice that we get a little line below our first row, and now, as we scroll down our spreadsheet, it remains visible. Something important to mention here is that when you choose to freeze the top row, ensure that the column heading is visible at the time of selection. Otherwise, it'll just display whatever the top row contained at the moment when you clicked the freeze option. This is a huge help when working with large datasets, as it means that you're not having to constantly come back up here to the top to see what each column is. And next we have the option to freeze the first column. So this works in a very similar way to freezing the first row, but of course it works for columns instead. So now as we scroll to the right, our first column always remains visible, which means we can always see our order number. There may also be times when we want to see the column headings as well as our first column. We'll first unfreeze our current pane by going back to the Freeze Panes menu and clicking on Unfreeze. Then we'll click into cell B2, and with this cell selected, we'll go back to our Freeze Panes button, but this time we'll click on Freeze Panes. And now we can see we have lines below our first row, as well as to the right of our first column. And if we scroll down now, we can see that our first row, so our column heading, remains visible. And also, if we move to the right of our spreadsheet, our first column remains visible too, so we can always see our order number. So this is how we can freeze panes inside of Excel. Now we'll have a look at a quick and easy way to split our columns. So there'll be many times when you have a column in Excel, perhaps a name column or address column for instance, where the entire value is entered into one cell. It may be though that you want to separate this value out, so you maybe have a separate first name and last name column, or a column for the state and a column for the zip code, for instance, rather than having it all in one column. Excel has a tool that we can use to help us do this, and it's called the Text to Columns tool. For this example, we'll split our product code column, which is in column M. And looking at it, we can see that we have a 3-character code initially, followed by an underscore, and then another 4 numbers. The first 3 characters may be the model of that item, and then the final 4 numbers may be a particular variation of that particular model. But let's say that we need to separate these two parts out. So between our first 3-character model identifier and our final 4 numbers, we have an underscore, and we can use that to actually split our column. So we'll first select our entire column. I won't select the column heading, so I'll just select the first cell and then press Ctrl plus Shift plus down arrow. And then now let's go to the Data tab. And then within here, we have the Text to Columns button. So let's click on that. And this will then open up the Text to Columns wizard. From within here, we then need to select the data type. And in this case, we can say that our data is delimited. And this will be the option you'll pick for most types of data. So let's click on Next, and then we'll enter our delimiter. So if we think back to the first lecture of the section, when we were looking at the notepad file for this data set, we mentioned that a delimiter is just a symbol that is used to separate elements. In this case, our delimiter is an underscore. So as there's no option for an underscore in the list here, we'll select Other, and then enter our underscore. And as we can see down here in the preview window, we now get 2 columns. So we have our first 3 characters, a line, which represents a new column, and then our 4 numbers. Let's click on Next again, and then we can enter our destination. So I'll just set it to be the end of our dataset, so column Z. And we do not need to change the data format, so let's click Finish. And now we can see that in column Z and column AA, we have our product code, but now separated into two different columns. Moving on, I'd now like to show you how to remove blank cells and duplicate data from within Excel. In this case, I already know for a fact that there's no duplicate data within this spreadsheet. So just to teach how to remove duplicates, I'll go ahead and just copy and paste a few rows here. If you like, you can follow along and create a few duplicates of your own, or just feel free to watch. Okay, so I've gone ahead and created a few duplicate rows there, just by copying and pasting existing rows. If not dealt with, duplicate data can cause significant problems during your analysis, as it can lead to incorrect analysis results and possibly lead to poor recommendations to or advice to senior managers. Luckily, Excel provides a powerful built-in feature designed to identify and automatically remove duplicate entries for us. To access this tool, navigate to the Data tab, and within here we'll find the Remove Duplicates button. Once selected, you'll be prompted to choose the columns to check for duplicate values, and by default, Excel automatically selects all the columns in your spreadsheet. This is generally the recommended setting. So the columns you select here are very important, as if we were to only select a single or maybe a couple of columns, we are likely to encounter some unexpected issues. For example, let's consider the product line column. If we unselected every other column and only selected this column, Excel will retain only one order for each product line, as we can see here. This is because it's seeing any more than this as a duplicate entry, which of course we know is incorrect as we have multiple orders of the same product line. And to avoid errors like this, it's recommended in most cases to select every row so that for a row to be deemed as duplicate, the values must be the same across all columns. So let's undo this last command and redo it, but this time making sure to leave all of our columns selected. And one thing to note here is that we have an option for My Data Has Headers, which our dataset does, so I'll make sure to leave this checked. We'll click OK, and this time we can see that Excel has removed 3 duplicate values. And this is the number of rows that I copied and pasted, so we know that this is correct. Now we'll have a quick look at how to identify and remove blank cells in Excel. On the Home tab and in the Editing group, we have an option for Find and Select. If we open this menu up, we'll see an option for Find Special. Inside of this menu, we have an option for blanks. Selecting this will then select all the blank cells within our worksheet, and then we can go to Delete in our Cells group and click on Delete Sheet Rows. The downside to this approach is that it will delete any row that has a single missing cell. So if we look down our spreadsheet here, we can see that it's taken our spreadsheet from what was around 2,800 rows at the start to just under 600 now. So if you're only wanting to delete a row where the entire row is missing, we can use a function to help us do this. And this is something we'll look at in the next section, but it's definitely possible to do. The final thing I'd like to show you in this lecture is the Special Paste functionality. Special Paste offers a wider range of options when pasting data into Excel. There are multiple Special Paste options available, as we can see in this list here. So some of them include different types of formatting and only copying the formulas. But we'll have a look at the 2 most helpful options to us as data analysts, which are the Values Only and Transpose. So let's start by looking at Transpose. Transpose can be used to switch the rows and columns of a selected range. So to illustrate this, we'll have a look at an example. Let's copy and paste our entire spreadsheet into a new sheet. So to select our entire dataset, we can click anywhere inside of our data and then hit Ctrl+A. Now we'll select all the rows and all the columns inside of our dataset. And take note here of our columns and rows. We have our column headings up here at the top going across to the right and our data going down in rows. Let's now right click and hit Copy, and then I'll make a new worksheet down here at the bottom. And then within this new sheet, I'll right click on cell A1 and hover over our Paste Special option. Within here, we'll see the option to transpose. This option can also be found in the main paste options too. So let's go ahead and click this. But now we can see that our rows and columns have been switched. So our column headings now go down the rows on our left, and our data goes across to the right in columns. Let's now take a look at the values only special paste option. This option can be very useful when you've used formulas and functions to perform calculations, and you want to keep the result but not the underlying formula. And again, we'll have a look at an example to better demonstrate the benefit of this. Let's say that we need to increase the price for each of our items by 50%. So for each row, we'll multiply the value in the price each column, so column C, by 1.5. So for our first row here, it would be 95.7 multiplied by 1.5. Let's create a new column at the end of our spreadsheet in column Z called updated price. And then below this, in cell Z2, we'll enter our formula, which will be cell C1 multiplied by 1.5. And then we'll use the autofill handle to calculate this number for all of our rows. So scrolling down here, we can see that all of our updated prices have been calculated. So let's select and copy all of these. And then we'll select all of our values in column C by pressing Ctrl plus Shift plus down arrow again with our first value selected. And then now, if we paste our data, we'll see that we get a reference error. And this is because if you look back to our updated price column, we'll see that we're trying to multiply the contents of cell C2 by 1.5. But currently, cell C2 is also a reference error. And this is because there's now no number within cell C2. So to fix this, we can paste the values only instead. So let's undo that last copy. And then instead, we'll hit right click and paste values only. And this time, yep, we can see here that we now have our updated price in column C. Just note here, the updated price column is now multiplying our current values in column C by 1.5 again, but these are no longer needed, so you can just delete the column. And column Z here is a good example of something called a helper column. So a helper column is just a temporary column that you create while you perform a calculation, and then when you're done with the calculation, you can delete the column. Okay, and that's everything here for our lecture on some of the additional tools available in Excel. I'll see you in the next lecture, which is the final one of this section, where we'll have a look at the Data Analysis Toolpak add-on.